Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And right now it seems like we are seeing the ripple effects now of Spotify's recent announcement. I think it was about a week ago. We covered it on this channel. Spotify's amendment to their hate speech policy, sort of extending it to the actions, the conduct of the artists featured on the platform, specifically removing R. Kelly and XXXTentacion, both of whom have some very well-documented sexual and violent abuse allegations against them, removing these particular artists from their featured and their front page playlists. Now, as I talked about in my video, I sort of wondered how up to the task Spotify really was, because how deep do these changes run? Because are these artists' songs, their albums, are they still being recommended when you listen to similar artists? I know that a lot of the traffic that albums and songs seem to get is happening primarily through a lot of these featured playlists if you look at the Spotify traffic. But is Spotify still recommending their music? Is Spotify penalizing other artists who have seen similar accusations against them, which Digital Music News kind of highlighted that, of course, we assumed there was a bit of an inconsistency there on my part. XXXTentacion's people also pointed out that there could be an inconsistency there because you're not penalizing the work of David Bowie, of John Lennon, of Led Zeppelin. I mean, there's a whole slew of artists that they listed. But also just days before announcing this hate conduct policy, Spotify added Chris Brown to several top playlists, which, again, the question comes up, what is the philosophy, what is the ethos behind sort of punishing artists on these grounds? Is it whether or not the allegations or convictions on this type of behavior recent? Does it need to be recent? How far in the past are we talking here? Is there a sell-by date or a statute of limitations on how long an artist can be punished or a record can be kind of buried on Spotify because of allegations or accusations that have been leveled at the artist who made that record? These are things Spotify hasn't really come forward with. Because, I mean, really at the end of the day, like whether or not the allegations are recent, is that as important as whether or not the allegations are true? I mean, if the allegations are true, then it should matter whether the allegations happened recently or 5 years or so ago or 10 years ago. I mean, maybe one could argue that, hey, you know, Chris Brown, it's been a while, he's paid his debt to society, so they say, and maybe that's Spotify's position. And if it is, I personally would like to know. I would be interested in knowing, because it doesn't really seem like Spotify is all that devoted to making these changes if they can't illustrate exactly what it is that's driving them to make them, outside of some kind of like vague sense of morality that they haven't really expressed fully. So again, to get back to the potential effects of these changes, we see here, as Stereogum is reporting, XXXTentacion streams under this hate content policy. Remember, this is a correlation. I guess we're yet to see fully whether or not it's a causation, but still, we're seeing X's streams drop, but R. Kelly's streams actually increased since this change, since this content policy change. Now, we see here in Billboard being quoted saying that the track Sad was removed from these playlists, including Rap Caviar. The streams have dropped 17% per day in the United States on average. That continued rate of decline, Billboard estimates, could cost the rapper as much as $60,000 in revenue in a year, from roughly equivalent to the United States of a median household income, so on and so forth. Kind of goes on from there. Now, X's fans are much younger, and this album is much newer than any number of albums you could be listening to in R. Kelly's catalog. So I could see a policy like this having the kind of effect that it is having on X, I could see this being much more than a correlation and actually a causation, because most likely a lot of people are kind of running across X on platforms like this after just being recommended his music because he happens to be a very viral and a very popular artist. And those are the types of algorithms and that Spotify functions off of. Those are the types of business decisions Spotify makes when picking and choosing who makes it into a playlist and who doesn't. What songs have viral potential and what songs are actually doing so well that we know people are going to want to hear them and hear them again. Considering that that is probably a major reason people are consuming X's music to begin with, again, it just kind of makes sense. Now, in the case of R. Kelly, we actually see like a 100,000 and almost 100,000 stream increase for the week, which the results of that, I think, are due to as follows. R. Kelly's fan base is much older, number one. Number two, the streams that fans are probably giving his records are most likely through just listening to his albums and listening to his content directly, because a lot of his fans probably just want to listen to his shit in his entire shit. They're probably not just perusing his stuff in a playlist. Like, for a lot of his fans, R. Kelly is probably a bit of a throwback, a nostalgic experience, somebody who they've been listening to for a long, long time, and they're well aware of the accusations against him. They're well aware of his behavior. They're well aware of all of that. Regardless, they have still decided that R. Kelly is still going to be a regular musical fixture in their lives, whether he lands on a frickin' playlist or not. Now, the additional, I think, sort of push happening here, I think has come as a result of the usual tension and attention that you give to a subject matter or that you give to an audience of something when the audience feels like, oh no, my ability to consume this is being limited. I have to go listen to it. So of course, as a result of that, you're going to drive a lot of attention to that particular thing. Now, whether this is hardcore R. Kelly fans like jumping in to support him, or if it's people kind of hopping on the bandwagon because they're morbidly curious, because through all of these headlines you've reminded them, oh, you know, I actually kind of like some R. Kelly songs, or you know, I kind of missed that one track, or oh, I used to really like that one album, or again, maybe it could be a more anxious kind of response to this change, to this decision, and they're thinking it's a bit of a Streisand effect type thing, and they're feeling like their limitation in listening to this sort of thing is going to drive their interest in trying it and listening to it. So it is kind of interesting to kind of see these numbers shifting in the way that they are. But if people are listening to R. Kelly as a result of this, you know, as far as like this increase in streams over the past week, then eventually that hubbub is going to die down, and maybe we'll sort of see R. Kelly's streams like hit a point of equilibrium, where he isn't sort of seeing that extra bump from being included into some of these playlists. XXXTentacion, though, again, I feel like while sure some of the consumption has dropped as a result of being in these playlists, I feel like we could also chalk part of this up to the fact that, you know, a lot of young people, they just kind of listen to new records and they move on to whatever the newest, hottest, nextest thing is. And there's new, relevant, and viral records dropping every single week. I mean, most of the people, while they are hardcore fans of XXXTentacion, they're probably listening to other records too. They're probably listening to other new releases as well. He's not the sole artist that they listen to. R. Kelly, on the other hand, though, I mean, for a lot of people, has been around for a long time and is most likely the favorite artist of millions. And I feel like he's had a longer time to make an impact on a larger music listening audience, many of whom habitually consume music in a much different way from the millennial audience. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. It'll be the past video that I made on this topic a week or so ago. You can hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Spotify music playlists forever.